Here are some of the top Canadian MLS players to keep an eye out for the 2024 season. And Alex, we are heading right to Portland because there's a trifecta of players I want to touch on because they will actually make a triangle. At least that's what's being reported right now. Maxime Crépeau, Zach McGraw, and Kamal Miller all expected to start for Neville and his side. Now they're expected to play in a back four, which is, like I mentioned, the two center backs, Kamal Miller playing on the left, Zach McGraw playing on the right, and then of course Crépeau in net. Now, you want to touch a little bit more on Zach McGraw because Matt Doyle reported that apparently he's going to be in for a massive season. But I still think it's important to see new players come into new systems, which is why I want to first touch on Maxime Crépeau and then move on to Kamal Miller and then end with Zach McGraw. So I know a lot of Canadians out there were disappointed with Crépeau's move to Portland. I didn't mind it. I thought he was going to end up somewhere in Major League Soccer. Now, maybe going from a club like LAFC to Portland's bit of a downgrade, but I'm excited to see what he can do. And for Kamal Miller to play alongside Zach McGraw, I'm excited for. He probably would have liked to stay with Messi and Inter, but I do think this is a big move for him, and I'm excited for him to get some good minutes. But Alex, I know that you disagree with a little bit of that because you weren't overly happy with any of the moves. So tell me what you think, and at least from the viewer's perspective, why could this trio be exciting to watch?
Yeah, I mean, look, we mentioned it in our transfers tier list video. Check that out if you haven't already. Um, there's reasons why to be pleased with the move because at the end of the day, they're going to play, they're going to get minutes, they have a chance to play starring roles. That's huge. But also, there's reasons why you wonder, especially for Miller, right? Like the fact that he had that chance to be a free agent, he signed a long-term deal with Miami, gets traded. That's rough, especially, and then Crépeau as a free agent, he goes to Portland, but ultimately they're at Portland now. It's going to be exciting to see what they can become as players. MLS is a growing league. This shouldn't hurt their national team stock. And I mean, we're cheating a bit here by talking all three of them at once. But what's exciting is that they all kind of complement each other. I think each is the key to the other's success, and I think that's kind of cool. That not only are we're gonna see these three Canadians shine, but they're gonna shine because of each other, and that could pay off for the national team, right? Like, how important was it when Alistair Johnston and Kamal Miller and everyone was thriving on CF Montreal? That all kind of blended in and helped the success of the national team. So for this, I think it's good because Zach McGraw, he's great in the air. He really impressed aerially last year and over the last few years with Portland. But maybe he's not the most ball playing center back. He's a bit more of an old school center back. For Canada, they struggle in the air. They don't have many guys who can be dominant aerially. Steven Vittoria can, but as we know, he doesn't always have the legs. McGraw could be a potential replacement, but with that ball playing, you kind of wonder, Canada wants to play with the ball. Well, that's where Kamal Miller is. One thing that Kamal Miller has been elite at the last few years, like genuinely top tier, is his progressive passing and his passing percentage. He's so good at playing out the back, creating triangles, doing that. He struggles a bit in the air sometimes. He's a great 1v1 defender, though, in space. Those two could complement each other. Kamal Miller can do a bit more of the playing out the back, a little more of the 1v1 defending. McGraw deals with stuff in the air. It can be a bit of a partnership. And then Max Crépeau slots in that because he's a great sweeper keeper, great with the ball at his feet. Again, he can help cover for a Zach McGraw who might be getting used to that sort of system. It's not his style of play. So I think that trio could really complement each other. And it's why I'm excited to see how they grow as a unit. And if they can make Portland a contender, maybe this move ends up paying off for them in terms of their national team prospects, especially for McGraw, because we know Miller and Crépeau are pretty locked in.
No, I really like all those points, Alex. I think having a keeper who's good with the ball at his feet, as well as Kamal Miller as Zach McGraw's partner, will only do good things for him. But I did really like that point, and I'll touch on it quickly before we move on, is the fact that a lot of Canadian fans like to look at maybe our keeper in the center back position as maybe a little bit a weak point for us. But if you have three players that are playing week in, week out, all season long, and just continuing to build chemistry, I really like that. And I think this move for Maxime Crépeau and Kamal Miller going to Portland does Zach McGraw wonders in terms of maybe getting a call up to the national team. Because like you said, he could be a future replacement for Vittoria, but I just like the idea of them playing together and on the pitch, being in that little triangle, you're not going to really know anyone better. Like, that is a perfect triangle to potentially replicate for the national team if need be. So definitely something to keep an eye out there for. But now, next up, I want to head to Vancouver for Ali Ahmed because Alex, this is another player that we're very excited about. We've touched on him quite a bit. He really impressed me in the Gold Cup. I like the little triangle he made with Bombito as well as with Richie Larea. But there's reports going out there that he is potentially going to be looked at to play in a right wing back role. I like him a little bit more personally in the midfield. Is anything you want to say about those reports, and do you expect him to play it wide this season?
Yeah, it's tough to say because Vanni Sartini, he plays very fluid systems, so we're actually gonna have to see this in practice. For what it's worth, Julian Gressel last year when he was playing, he played in a right wing back role that kind of was an auxiliary midfield role. He'd play in right wing back sometimes, and then he'd sometimes pop up in the middle. And I think that's what I'd hope to see from Ali Ahmed, because I agree. Centrally, he just his ball progression was a joy to watch. The way he would get on the ball, break lines with his dribbling, his passing. He has the intelligence to find space in the final third. Those are all attributes you want from a number 8. But I understand he has speed. You want to maybe use some of that speed out wide. So I think if there's a scenario where he plays a bit of a combination role, that could help him for Canada as well, right? If you know that okay, he can play in the midfield, but say for depending on the right wing back, if it's Tajon Buchanan, him and Ahmed could maybe form a bit of a partnership, right? Where Ahmed kind of can cover for him if Tajon is going up and cutting inside and playing a bit more centrally as a wing back. I think there's potential for something there. So yeah, it is something where I agree reading it at first, kind of like Ali Ahmed wing back. I just think he brings so much more to a game in midfield with the all actions that he can provide. But I think there's some potential for him to maybe find a bit of damage in a Julian Gressel like role that genuinely for a few months when Gressel was with the Whitecaps was vaulting him towards MVP discussion. So anything like that for Ahmed, I think you're smiling from a Canadian perspective.
Well, I think Vanny will hopefully be able to know what to do with him this season. I'm excited for that. But we are sticking with Vancouver, just going over to the other flank where we will take a look at Sam Adekubi. Now, a lot of Canadians kind of know what they're going to get out of Adekubi, but because he didn't spend an entire season at the Whitecaps, I want to touch on him this season. As long as he's healthy, happy, and ready to go, I think Sam Adekubi can be a big player right now for the Whitecaps. Maybe, unfortunately, it might hurt Ryan Raposa's opportunities to get in, but what do you expect out of Sam Adekubi this season? Because when he left, obviously with the devastation that happened in Turkey, when he left Europe, I know a lot of Canadians were, a little disappointed that he didn't stay, but I understood, wanting to go back home. And now I think he's going to hopefully be a little rejuvenated and bring something, because this is a player that can make a big impact for the national team. So what do you want to see out of him this season, and why should Canadians be excited to see him play for the Caps?
Well, we just have to remember how crucial he is to Canada. Genuinely, for periods in that World Cup run in 22, he was, at times a top 5 player for Canada, like genuinely that important. It's just sometimes you forget about him because, Adekugbi's his big shortcoming with Canada, and it's something he's never been able to control, is that he plays the same position as Alphonso Davies. That's just sometimes international soccer, right? But despite that, Adekugbi was so good. It's part of the reason why Herdman was comfortable playing Davies higher up the pitch, because he knew that Adekugbi was going to be there and cover. I think it's really stressed right now when Alphonso Davies suffers an injury for Bayern, as he recently did. You realize, oh yeah, Adekubi's the next man up. You want him healthy, you want him contributing, and he always steps up for Canada. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what he can do for Vancouver. I think this system fits him nicely, that he'll get to play in a sort of left wing back role where he'll get to participate a lot in the build-up, which is an underrated skill of his, but then get forward more and bring a bit of final product, which he's teased at. He teased at Hatayspor, he teased at Galatasaray, that he can be a dangerous final product guy, even if his best skills are ball progression and helping a team play out the back. Because I think Vancouver could use both of those skills down that left flank. So hopefully he can get fit soon. He's coming off a bit of an injury that's bothered him since last year, and they're kind of taking his time to get him to full fitness, because he's going to have a huge role to play in terms of that ball progression for the Caps, and for definitely going to play a big role for Canada, especially if Alphonso Davies misses out in the March window, for example. You're going to need a healthy Adekubi to play a massive role.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see Adekubi fully fit and back at it, because we know the talent he has. Now, you did mention Gressel, so I'm going to take that point and move over now to the Columbus Crew, where Mo Farsi took his starting role in MLS Cup final. That is the next player we are going to focus on, our first dual Nat. Now, there was some rumors linking him to the Middle East. I'm very excited to see that he, at least it looks right now, he's going to stay with the Crew. I think he could be in for a big season. Like I said, Gressel had a great campaign between the Crew and Whitecaps last season, and for one of the most important games, obviously, in the most important game at MLS Cup final, they went with Mo Farsi. Now, I think he's on the cusp of a potential national team call-up in terms of what he's producing on the pitch. Whether he wants to commit fully yet or not, that's another question, but I think he could be in for a big season and hopefully have an opportunity to start consistently. Do you expect him to potentially move on and really take that starting right wing back role for the Crew?
Yeah, I think this could be a breakout season, because Farsi teased hints of a breakout, especially his start last year was phenomenal for the Crew. Then maybe as we saw, Gressel came in, kind of took his spot for a bit, but then he won it back, which is always what you want to see from a young player. It's important to remember that was his first full MLS season. Like, and he ended up playing on the champs. Like the fact that you have to remember this was a learning curve under a Wilfred Nancy system that, it's a very intricate system, can take some times to learn. I think Alistair Johnson had my favorite quote about Nancy Ball when he was at Montreal, saying like he completely changed the way he saw and played football. Like he relearned the mechanics just because Nancy has such a unique way of viewing the game. I think it's impressive that in that first season, his first season MLS, Farsi adapted so well to Nancy Ball, knowing how to build up, how to make final third entries, how to make those final balls, because that's what Farsi's always been good at, dating to his cavalry days. He's just so lethal in the final third. But adding this element of build-up play and defensive game as well, quietly growing as well. I think this could be a real breakout year for him to get that second full season under his belt, third season in the Crew system. So yeah, I think we're kind of sleeping on him, especially as well, like we mentioned, from a Canadian perspective. Yeah, that right back position is pretty loaded. Alistair Johnson, Richie Larea, of course, Tajon Buchanan, you can count him in that mix. Shows all of a sudden you do need fullback depth, and there could be a role for guys like Farsi to play this year. So hopefully he can get that breakout, because there is a door for him for Canada. It's just a matter of does he want to open it.
Yeah, it is tough. And I mean, one of the things that I think goes against Tajon Buchanan is that his final distribution isn't quite there. I think that's fair to say. The thing I enjoyed watching the most about Farsi this past season is, you kind of touched on it, what he does in the final third. But the clever runs that he's able to make coming from wide, and then his distribution into the box, he's an excellent crosser of the ball. He can get in dangerous positions, and if Canada decides to bring him into a squad, maybe you don't start him for a Richie or for a Johnston or even for a Buchanan, but you bring him off the bench, some fresh legs with that that dangerous instinct to get in behind and be able to cross, he can do something. So he's definitely one that I wouldn't take lightly, and I hope that we're able to secure, because Algeria at some point will probably give him an opportunity if we don't first. But now we're moving on over to Nashville, where there's another duo of Canadians, Jacob Schaffelberg, Lucas McNaughton. Again, Alex, we've talked about these two players for quite some time. Let's start with McNaughton, who I think he had one of the strongest first halves of Canadians in MLS last campaign. He kind of veered off a little bit, but you and I remember we're talking about his performances and how he was just so secure at the back that we were expecting him to, maybe if Canada was to play a back four, that he could be a starter, just straight up start in that back four. When I'm looking at players to maybe take over for Steven Victoria, I do look at someone like Zach McGraw. I look at someone like Lucas McNaughton. He's getting up there in his late 20s, but I do think that he could have a role to play, especially if he can come out here and have a big season for Nashville. As for Jacob Schaffelberg, again, Schaffelberg is such an important player coming off the bench. Like, he can do it for the national team, he can do it for Nashville, but I want to see him just kind of take a step to be a little bit more than that. I think he started about half the games last campaign for Nashville. I want to see him lock down a starting role. I want to see him play week in, week out, and take his game to the next level, whatever that may look like. Whether it's, being able to track back, which he proved that he can do. He's dangerous going forward. He's quick. He's exciting, but he's just missing something right now that solidifies him in that starting role. And I'd like to see both these players find a starting role going forward, because I do think that they could have a good opportunity to play for the national team going forward, and maybe even play an important role as well.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see for both of them, because to start with McNaughton, like you did, the one thing that did hurt him was literally he got hurt. I think that was unfortunate, because Nashville did have good center back depth. So when he arrived from TFC, that was kind of something that was said that, this system is going to fit him perfectly if he gets minutes. He ends up winning a spot, does great, and then he gets hurt, and it's tough, because you're like, Nashville is genuinely one of the only teams where a McNaughton drops, they have another ready-made replacement just ready to step up. And he did win his spot back at the end of the year. But yeah, like you mentioned, the second half was a bit slower than you would have liked. I think a full, healthy 2024 will do McNaughton wonders, because yeah, like you mentioned, he's showing that he can be a potential Victor Victoria replacement. He's so good in the air. And Nashville realizes it. I mean, he's good on defensive headers. He's since Pacific days. He's always been such a good force in headers. But I love just watching Nashville play, because Gary Smith is so good at offensive set pieces. And I just love how nearly every set piece they run was either McNaughton's head or Walker Zimmerman's head, either flicking or getting on the end of it. Just shows his aerial prowess. And he's quietly good on the ball. Like, people don't realize that he's a solid ball player who can make things happen on the in possession and play sometimes that long switch, but also just play the short combination play. That added a bit of an element to Nashville's game, because they're a bit more typically direct. And, last year they started playing a lot with more of the ball, playing out the back with McNaughton involved. So hopefully he can break through. It's going to be stiff competition at center back with the McGraw. Joel Waterman, you can't forget. I think he's someone we're really sleeping on over at CF Montreal, who could have another breakout season. And there's definitely other options that are cropping up. You can't forget Luke the Fougerolles and everyone, right? So it's definitely going to be stiff. But if McNaughton can have a good season, he's definitely feels like someone who could get some minutes for Canada this year. And as for Schaffelberg, it's same as McNaughton, just get some consistency. I think as well. Some injuries kind of derailed what was a promising start to the season. So just stay healthy, get those minutes. We know what Schaffelberg can bring, that speed, but also he's shown a lot of end product in his finishing, and his assisting has grown a lot. So just keep that up. Try to get some actions in that final third. Use that speed to good effect, and there's no reason why he can't claw back into that national team discussion if he does that.
No, and like you said, they're right on the cusp. Both of them are on the cusp of being very crucial first team players for Nashville. And if they can solidify that, then I think that could transition over to the national team, at least getting regular call-ups, because I definitely still think with that back line that McNaughton could be one that is important for us going forward. But now we're going to turn over to TFC with DeAndre Kerr. And Alex, I'm really curious to get your take here, because TFC had a disastrous campaign. I mean, John Herman coming in now and trying to pick up the pieces. One of the very, very few positive things that came out of last season was DeAndre Kerr, and I liked his game. I always thought he was going to end up being more of a winger. He played a 4-3-3. He's on the right, he's on the left, but he played a lot centrally towards the end of the season, and he popped up with some goals and looked like when he was put through on goal, he had the confidence and the composure to find the back of the net, which that TFC side was lacking. And I thought that the final third of that campaign did wonders for Kerr's confidence and his opportunity, hopefully, to maybe grow on that this season. So from what you saw of him, do you expect Kerr to fall into maybe that striker conversation? Because with Bernadeschi and Insigne, probably occupying the two wide positions, it kind of looks like that's his only opportunity this season to start.
Yeah, and I think he offers an intriguing attacking profile. That's why he kind of got those minutes and got those opportunities. He's got kind of that height to play as a number 9, but he's not really a target for it. He's someone who he has good speed for someone a bit taller like he is. And I think what's nice is that he brings that inside forward kind of intelligence of knowing where to kind of run in those channels between center backs and fullbacks, and that's kind of where he thrived a lot last year, getting some of his goals in those moments. So yeah, hopefully he can start up front, because he's a bit of a different profile. Maybe not a true 9, but someone who can score goals, make those runs. It's always dangerous, and I think that's something that TFC missed. They tried to start Adama Diomande and then CJ Sapong. Those guys just didn't offer the verticality that you need when you have a Bernadeschi and Insigne who want to cut inside and play in the lines. It helps to have a striker who can stretch space out and offer them threats over the top, or at the very least offer decoy runs that are going to draw defenders out and create the space for the Italians. And Kerr did a great job of doing that. So hopefully we can see more of it, because yeah, as we mentioned, Canada's forward group, it's kind of a wide open race after a David and a Larin. So reason why a Kerr can't get off to a hot start, maybe help TFC get some surprise wins and maybe turn that into some sort of national team recognition.
I hope for him, because like I said, at the end of last season, he did really impress me. The runs he was doing, the composure, everything about his game was just exciting. He brought a little spark to that team. But like you mentioned, he's going up against Larin and David, but then on top of that, you got Ugbo and Bear scoring. It is a tough race. Russell Rowe as well. So, who knows what the season will bring for TFC, but I'm hoping Kerr can continue on where he left off and hopefully have a big season as well. But now we're going to go over to Matthew Schwaner, one of my favorite players coming out of Major League Soccer with CF Montreal. He's their heartbeat, Alex. He simply is. I love everything about his game. He's a versatile player. I've seen him play it on the wing back. I've seen him play kind of like an attacking 8 to a 10 in the 6. He just brings a little bit of everything. I've always made it clear I want to see him with the national team in squads going forward. Sometimes it seems like he gets a little bit overlooked. So when you're looking at CF Montreal and a lot of the good work they did this offseason, I think it really gives Schwaner to have an opportunity to continue on and push on to hopefully get into a spot, especially with Biello behind the, behind the decision making of who's coming up. I feel like that will help Schwaner a little bit as long as he continues on. So what are you looking forward to with Schwaner this season, and do you think he can push on from what he did last campaign?
I think with Schwaner, it's been his breakout since 2021 is when it started, and he was playing left wing back, the beginning of the Nancy ball. He was just shining there. So this thing has been coming for a long time now, but Yeah, I agree. Like, it feels like last year we saw a different level, especially him in the midfield, taking that new role and end up being perfect with this just, first off, his endless work rate. Like, he just covers every blade of grass, but he's got quality. He can go in the final third and pick out some dangerous passes, which we saw, at his time at wingback. That was one of his big skills. It impressed me, just his ability to generate, chances, assists, just with his dangerous crossing ability. He's brought that to the midfield role, those dangerous passes, but he's adding a bit of a shooting side to his game, that willingness to go on and just take shots and test keepers from distance or inside the box with his late runs. But then defensively, yeah, he's, maybe he's not a Samuel Piet in terms of just being a true number 6, but with his work rate, with his ability to cover ground, he is going to help, play aggressively. And with Laurent Courtois, playing a bit more of an aggressive system, hopefully Schwaner fits in like a glove into that midfield, and just helps it, the system take work. So yeah, Schwaner is an exciting one. Canada needs midfielders. We've been mentioning it. So there's no reason why a Schwaner, especially if he keeps up the form that he's had, he should be almost, written in pen at that point if he can keep up that start. So definitely something to watch over at Montreal.
I agree. I'm really excited to see him in this system because, like you mentioned, I mean, he's an engine. He's a machine in that midfield, and he added the ability to score goals and honestly to pick up assists as well. His goal contributions increased quite a bit last campaign. Really excited for him. And Alex, we started this video with a trifecta of Canadians coming out of Portland, and we are going to end with a trifecta of Canadians coming out of Colorado. And I'm going to leave the floor open to you. Go through the 3 and tell me which one you're excited to keep an eye on for.
Yeah, I mean, look, Colorado is a sneaky pick to watch for Canadians, but you got Ralph Priso there, you got Moise Bombito, you got Kamani Stewart-Baines. Look, I think there's one that I really want to keep an eye on from a Canadian perspective. Don't sleep on the other two, though. But it has to be Moise Bombito, just at center back. He's someone that right away, once drafted last year, he was, immediately took note. Center back, 6'4", ball playing. And then you saw it in action. He was great in preseason. Then he got injured, kind of slowed things down, but then he came back, played well, goes to the Gold Cup, just shows off his ball playing ability. And then for Colorado, at the end of the year, ends up playing as a fullback and doesn't look out of place. How many 6'4" center backs are getting thrust into attacking fullback positions and are not looking out of place? He is, just on the ball. He's an absolute unicorn. You have to feel for his size. He can dribble, he can cross, he can do all those things. His ball progression is great, but defensively, he's 6'4", he's good in the air, and he's growing his defensive side of the game. Man, I really hope Colorado gives him reps at center back this year, because I think if you can, that's huge for Canada. He genuinely, that center back discussion it feels like a sleeper pick. And look, if he's at his age and the fact that he's only heading into a second pro season, I think if he has a great season at center back, European teams are going to be interested, and there's no reason why Canada can't bet on him, because it feels like, of all the center backs that we've mentioned, look, there's a lot of great names. It just feels like Bombito has the highest upside of all of them. So hopefully he can try to capitalize on that this year.
Yeah, he's a raw talent. There's no getting around it. He hasn't even touched the potential that he has yet. I watched him play at left wing back, left back. I've seen him play as a holding midfielder for Canada, which I didn't like. He shows that he can play. He can do a little bit of good at everywhere. But I really liked him as an outside right center back, outside left center back, and even like you said, Alex, if it's a back four as a center back, I think that's where he will be set up for success. And with the money that Colorado have invested in their squad, I think that he could be in for a big season. I just, like you said, I want to see him play where he's at his best, which in my opinion is on the outside of a back 3 or in a back 4. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have on today's episode. Let us know what you think of the Canadians we touched on and if there's any that we missed. And of course, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.